Today's session will tell you about SharePoint. It will tell you about what SharePoint is. We will talk about SharePoint sites, list items, and maybe we'll talk about some differences between SharePoint and OneDrive for Business as well. Yep. So SharePoint, it's a place for you to store data. So it's your cloud-based service that's provided by Microsoft. It helps organizations share and manage content. Now, this data that's saved in SharePoint, if you think of it as a file server, has multiple folders, and within that folders, you have a lot of data saved. And the good thing about SharePoint is it's permission oriented or permission trimmed, so you can assign access to resources as well using permissions. Permissions can be granted via groups or individually, similar to what you do in Active Directory or Azure Active Directory as well. If you are aware of Exchange mailboxes and how to grant access to folders in your mailboxes, it would be something similar to that. Yeah. Now, SharePoint. What is SharePoint in Microsoft M365? It is your cloud-based service, like we discussed earlier. Now, this is used to store data, and with this, you can empower teamwork. You can quickly find information, and you can collaborate across your entire organization. Now, back in the days, if you were to rewind time a long time ago, maybe many years ago, we used to have file servers, right? So there was one file server, everyone knew that one IP address, and you would access data using that IP address. Yep. So since the file server was used so much, what Microsoft probably decided to do is have an application or an operating system, which is SharePoint. And in SharePoint, it lets you organize data and files a little better than what you can do on your file server. Now, SharePoint, it's basically made up of site collections. So site collections is a collection of sites. Yep. So think of a site as your internal company website, which contains many web parts. Yeah. Web parts like document libraries, which are used to save files and folders and things like that. Lists, which are used to save or similar to your Excel, and you have a calendar, and you have many apps which are provided by Microsoft through SharePoint. You do have third-party applications as well, which you can have a look at in the SharePoint store. Now, a SharePoint site can have multiple pages, right? So there's a layout.aspx, there's a home.aspx, and multiple pages which are part of one site. And there are multiple sites which could be part of a site collection. You can, now it's a little bit confusing, but within a SharePoint site collection, you can have multiple subsites. Subsites are your smaller sites. Yeah. The great thing about SharePoint is since it is so versatile and it can integrate with so many different applications in Azure and Office 365, it can be used. Sorry, it's permission trimmed. So I can really assign or give permissions to resources that a person or a user needs in my company. There are four types of sites in SharePoint Online. So when you go ahead and enter the SharePoint Admin Center or SharePoint Admin Center and try to create a site, you'll have multiple different types of sites. The first one over here is a team site. A team site comes with an Office 365 group attached to it. And I believe all of you all have probably dealt with Office 365 groups or your unified groups, but it's a group which is more than a group. It is security. It's a security group. It is mail enabled. It also comes with the SharePoint team site, and it will come with a calendar, so on and so forth. So it would let your users within the organization or within a team really collaborate on multiple resources. Say, for example, you have a file which is in SharePoint Online. Yep. Now, multiple people can work on this file simultaneously. right? So let's say I'm sitting here in India, you're sitting in Netherlands, and one person in Australia. We can all work on that file at the same time, and you can see where another person is editing. Yep. That process is called, or that little function is called co-authoring, where multiple people co-author on a same file. The next one is a communication site. Think of it as a bulletin board and used to communicate data or announcements. Another one is a team site, but without your Office 365 group. So it's your new site, but there is. Sorry, I'm getting so many calls. But it's it's a SharePoint team site, but it doesn't have a group associated with it. So you would not have it mail enabled. Then the last one is your classic legacy SharePoint sites, which we used to have back in the days in 2016, 17, 18. On those SharePoint sites, I liked them because they were faster and for me they look good. But they're basically old sites. The new sites look nice, but there's a lot of performance issues when I deal with SharePoint new sites. Now, in SharePoint, some of the web parts, we'll talk about two over here, or web apps, are one is a list and one is a library. A list is basically,
Lint, I have a doubt.
yep, go ahead.
So if we create a communication site or a team site without a group or a classic site, can
Mhm.
we later on associate or link it to a group?
Yep, you can. You
Okay.
can
Also
attach
for a
it to a
communication site.
communication site. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure about this one, the team site. You cannot do
Okay.
it to a legacy site.
Okay.
I'm very sure you cannot do it to a legacy site.
Okay.
But
Okay.
for the other one, you can attach a group to it later on.
I guess for a classic site it is possible, but for a communication site it is not possible.
Probably.
Okay.
But a classic site is it's not. You have to convert that classic site into your new site, and then and only then can you attach it to a group.
Okay.
You have to convert the site. It's a process to convert the site. But a classic site, it's old school. There's no group associated with a classic site.
Hmm.
So you'll have to
Okay.
convert that site, and once it is converted, then you can associate it with a group. There's a conversion.
Okay.
And
So
when you go ahead,
okay.
when you convert your legacy site into a uh, new site, a new SharePoint site, there are a lot of things which used to work in the old site which will not work in the new site. The new site has different functionalities and it is very, I guess, fluid. Whereas the old sites, if you had some code written in the old sites, those codes or those web parts that if you're adding custom web parts, those won't transfer over to your new site. Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you have to convert it to a new site.
Yep.
So
And
okay.
correct.
How how do you do it?
There's a long process of doing that.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
So Microsoft does provide a way to do that, but it is a long one. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that Microsoft introduced all the new sites, new SharePoint sites, and at that time they gave they're still there, but they announced that people should maybe try and change to a new SharePoint site since the legacy sites, well, they lack a lot of functionality that the new sites have. If you were using SharePoint from back in the days, you would probably like the legacy sites. But if you since you know SharePoint from now, then you probably like the new sites. Yeah, it's more fluid and it looks prettier, but you can do a lot of customization in an old site. Yep. We talk about a couple of web parts in or web apps in SharePoint. We'll talk about a list. A list is similar to let's say a spreadsheet. Yeah. So it's one of the apps which comes with SharePoint Online. It's used to collect a lot of data and you can provide access to users within that list. Its list is a list. A document library, think of it as a list, but you can save files and folders to it. and you can permission trim each one of those files and folders. So you can assign permissions to each file and folder if you'd like to. Now, this is where you can say SharePoint started, where a lot of people use it to save documents. Yep. And you can assign permissions on those documents. Now, with SharePoint, since SharePoint is integrated with so many different Office 365 technologies or services, you do have Power Apps and Power Automate, which used to be called Flow, that work very well with SharePoint. So if you want to automate anything in SharePoint, like a workflow, which is deprecated now, but like workflows, you would use Power Automate. Yep. That does bring us to the end of our short session on SharePoint.